For Oz Music Month, Oz Music Monday here on ABC Radio Queensland, also online and on the ABC Listen app. It's just over 10 minutes until your 11 o'clock ABC News. And of course, hearing from Pace and the choir Imperfect, and I shared my imperfect singing voice. So is there a difference between perfectionism and excellence? Psychology consultant and author Dr. Jo Lukens is with me now. Good morning.
Good morning, Susan.
I'm glad to hear that your ears are intact after my singing now this morning.
And we could also do a story on bravery and courage. It was wonderful to hear.
Oh, thanks, Dr. Jo. I'll give you that 50 later. How do you define excellence compared to perfectionism?
It's important for us to understand that they are quite different. So excellence is really about consistently doing your best, pushing to be better, pushing for growth, and I guess along the way accepting those mistakes when they come along as being part of the process. What we see with perfectionism is quite different because that is where someone is chasing the flawless performance, if you like, or what we often see with perfectionism is higher levels of anxiety and self-doubt. So they are quite different in how they present themselves.
So I guess that talks a little to why perfectionism is so counterproductive.
It is counterproductive because generally, if you think about it, in most of our endeavours in life, whether it be anything from the dinner we're about to cook or the work we're about to do or the parenting or grandparenting we're about to perform, when we aim to be perfect at something, we're really setting what is largely impossible standards. And so then that puts us into a scenario where we either attain it or we don't, and we usually don't, so therefore by default we fail. So we know that what happens is when people are constantly striving for perfectionism, it generally doesn't feel that great because it generally doesn't happen, and it really impacts the enjoyment of how we do things and can really stop people, particularly in the learning phase with any task that we're doing.
What are the hallmarks of striving for excellence?
The difference, I think, and this is what we see when people are seeking excellence, is people will set high standards and achievable goals, because sometimes people have said to me, if not perfectionism, then are we going for second best? Well, absolutely not. We know we can certainly be aiming to achieve for excellence, which generally is more attainable. And when we're setting our goals for ourselves, if that's what we're doing, is we want those goals to be out of reach, but not out of sight. It's the out of sight goals that are usually the perfectionistic ones. So when people set excellence as a goal, they'll take on board feedback, they'll see the challenges, and they'll really give themselves a better chance to learn and to grow.
How does perfectionism impact self-esteem and motivation?
Yeah, it's not good for it usually, unless you're being perfect all the time, in which case you're probably doing just fine. But for most people, what we see is if we're constantly aiming for perfection, it really erodes our confidence and our self-esteem, because it usually relies on those external markers, or sometimes it relies on outside approvals, and mistakes are disasters. And so what we see, what happens for people who are constantly striving for perfection, it can really have a negative impact and decrease motivation as well, which makes it really hard to get started again coming back from a disappointment.
You're hearing from Dr. Jo Lukens, author and psychology consultant. Can excellence produce better results than perfectionism, do you think?
Yes, more often than not, that's exactly what it will do. So when we're striving for excellence, we're more open to things like our creativity, we're more resilient, and we make space for innovation. So when we're in a perfectionistic mindset, it can be quite anxiety-provoking, as I was saying before, and quite limiting, and we can feel a little bit narrow in our vision. So we're not as open to striving to achieve excellence. And we know that from some of the research that's been conducted, those people who look through their performances or the world through how can I be excellent at this rather than how can I be perfect at this, they generally will get better results. And the perfectionistic approach, you're more likely to see some of those stresses and even in some cases burnout for people.
Yeah. So if somebody's listening along and they think, oh, perfectionism might be something that I relate to more than the striving for excellence, how can you shift that mindset? What are some strategies we could look at?
Yeah, Great question there. The first thing is, if anyone's hearing this and going, oh, I think I am a bit perfectionistic, the good news is you're not alone. So it's certainly things that many people will do, but what we know is that an excellence mindset will probably be a bit more helpful for you. So it's one of those things that whilst none of us particularly like it when we make a mistake, that usually is part of growing and part of getting better. I often say to people that success leaves clues. So when things go well, there's little clues in there as to why that happened. But when the failures and the disappointments come along, what they do is they offer us lessons. So mistakes are part of the growth. We want to set realistic goals, focus on the process and what it is that we're doing, and really be kind to ourselves as we're stretching ourselves and putting ourselves out there to try and be better. And the other thing I think that can really help is to celebrate the progress along the way.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like the learning, the striving for improvement is more meaningful than perfection.
Oh, absolutely. Look, sometimes there'll be days when we don't feel like learning the lesson. We'd rather the thing just work. That's okay. Each time we step forward and we try something new, there's that opportunity for us to be wiser, more curious, to learn, and those things really help us in the long term and really build up our approach to learning anything new. So the good thing is if we're trying to be excellent in the kitchen, if that's what we're aiming to do, as we practice those skills, it will help us in other domains of our lives as well. So it's a really transferable skill, and I think what I love about when people seek excellence over perfection is a much kinder way to get you the results that you want to get.
Psychology consultant and author Dr. Jo Lukens, thanks so much for being with me today.
Thanks, Susan.